We are on the cusp of a new American century. You see it with the Iran crisis. While America keeps the world's oceans safe for trade, other nations had no plan if the straits closed. While we pay the cost to protect global trade, when Britain can't even operate a one-car funeral parade and China doesn't have a blue water navy, other nations are now panicking because they just found out windmills won't cut it, that China's solar panels can't fuel airplanes, that agriculture depends on fossil fuels. Every nation knew this could happen. They had no plans. They were hostage to Khomeini. They genuflected to the climate cult and prayed to the pagan gods, and their populations are now at real risk. Only America under President Trump had the courage to denounce the green stupidity and confront the scourge of radical Islam. This is what leadership looks like. And it's because patriotic Americans believe in the power of industry and science, not in gloom and doom and backward cultures. As ships from all over the world enter the Gulf of America to secure much needed energy, the world is now waking up. The climate cult is over. The era of zero growth has died like a bird in a windmill farm. The Paris Accords have crashed on the rocks and sunk in the Sea of Oman. First, the United States is going to clean up and secure the Persian Gulf long term, even though we don't need it. The IRGC thugs have a clear choice. They can either join the community of nation states that we, the United States, created after World War II against the tyranny of globalism, or they can feel like the American hostages in 1979 and play the victim. It doesn't matter to us, though it does matter to the Iranian people. But President Trump is doing far more than just cleaning up Iran. Hence, the hysteria. Because when you look deeper, he is restructuring the entire global energy and industrial economic system. He is using Iran and London's attempt to blackmail the world over the Strait of Hormuz to launch the greatest industrial mobilization in history based on the international energy emergency Iran and London have created. You can already hear the screams from London. This video will break down the steps President Trump has just taken to rebuild America as an energy superpower and industrial powerhouse, that we are once again becoming freedom's forge. And by doing so, we are fulfilling the great promise of the 20th century, where mankind embraces the great principles of American civilization, the freedom to grow, build, and prosper, that we are created in the living image of the Creator, that we are called to subdue nature, to be fruitful and multiply, and to replenish the earth for coming generations. This is the new American 21st century. I'm Mike Stager, and I've been fighting to rebuild the United States for over 20 years. If you want to rebuild our nation and forge a new century of prosperity, then sign up for our free newsletter and like and subscribe to this channel. Because the steps being taken today are setting the foundation for a new world order. So while others scream chaos and clutch their pearls, ignore them. We are forging a monumental shift. So let's jump into it. For 50 years since Jimmy Carter, the West has been told to manage its own decline. The Germans were told to lose their industry to save the planet. Volkswagen is now shuttering plants that have run for 100 years, and German titans like BASF are moving chemical production to China, literally because China builds coal plants every week. Germany has been sold the most expensive industrial suicide in modern history, and they are still being told it is a moral accomplishment. This is what losing two major wars does. Look at the British, who have no excuse except an inbred monarchy. They are sitting on one of the largest offshore oil fields in the world, and they are obsessed with offshore wind. Keir Starmer's Labour government, elected on a promise to help the working class, cut energy subsidies on the British people during winter, all because of the climate cult agenda. Starmer's own backbenchers are already drafting his political eulogy. But America is different. We don't accept defeat. We don't accept rule by oligarchy or worship pagan gods. A month ago, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin put a stake through the heart of the climate cult. He ended the 2009 Obama endangerment finding. This was the legal fiction that declared carbon dioxide, the gas we exhale and that trees love, a pollutant, subject to federal regulation. That single rule was the regulatory canon aimed at every American power plant, refinery, steel mill, auto plant, farm, and cattle ranch over the last 15 years. This was the agenda that brainwashed a generation of school kids, not only that America is bad, but so is human advancement. It was the legal foundation for America's demise. Zeldin, in one major deregulatory move, ended the climate cult in America. And now, with Iran, President Trump is ending it on a global scale. And he said it at the United Nations in September. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people. This is what real leadership looks like. And now, after 50 years of destruction, we are turning up the industrial heat. On Monday, Donald Trump signed 5 memorandum under the Defense Production Act. The Defense Production Act, passed in 1950, made it possible to create the powers of mobilization and industrial coherence that was known as the arsenal of democracy during World War II. It gives the president broad authorities to mobilize and direct the domestic industrial base in support of national security. These memos on Monday direct the Secretary of Energy to rebuild the American energy and industrial system now. Not someday, not do a study, but build now. And the financing has already been lined up with the one big beautiful bill. This means our national strength no longer depends on the goodwill of Wall Street bankers who say they don't like the risk. They said the same thing to Lincoln as he confronted insurrection and civil war. Lincoln's response? He created a new national banking system and told Wall Street to go suck on a ball of London-bound cotton. Trump is doing something very similar. These directives mean that our nation's critical energy resources and infrastructure are now a national, military, and economic necessity as in time of war. Not since 1950 has the federal government moved this much industrial authority with a sense of national purpose. And this time, the enemy is 50 years of our own surrender. The 5 memos address coal and minerals, natural gas, petroleum, the entire national grid, and major projects like nuclear. 5 key pillars to restore the Temple of Liberty and the arsenal of our republic. Every critical input of American industrial base has been declared a national security emergency. It's not a suggestion, it's declared an emergency. And the entire national sector of manufacturing and production is now being called in to help. This is a war mobilization to end the 50 years of stupid. And the money, hundreds of billions of dollars in federal financing, is already there to make sure it gets done. Now, there are always the cynics who will say it's all talk and no action. Let's be clear. We are the force of action. We are not the victims. We are the citizens of the greatest republic, and our president and his team have given a call to battle. Each of the memos ends by stating to the Secretary of Energy, you are authorized and directed to implement this determination. Chris Wright is no fool. He knows it's time to get it done. Enough with the excuses. That's why you should support Promethean Action, because we are dedicated to rebuilding our nation and launching a new Christian renaissance of science, discovery, and artistic beauty. That's what the enemy wants to stop. That's what real victory looks like, and that's our mission. Now let's cover some of the details regarding nuclear and the grid. A nuclear renaissance is starting to grow. The memo on major energy infrastructure says, the domestic capability of development, manufacturing, and deployment of large-scale energy and energy-related infrastructure is essential to the United States national defense. Yet due to financing risks, regulatory delays, and market barriers, these can't be met in full under existing market conditions. On Thursday, the Defense Production Act Consortium will convene to act on these executive orders. What's the consortium? It's the working group the president stood up to put industry, the national labs, the utilities, and the federal government into one room to figure out how to start building. Because we need to build hundreds of these plants, as many as 700 over the next 10 years, if we are going to maintain economic dominance. China is bringing plants online every year, and they have 39 under construction. The Secretary has also opened up bids from states to participate in the full fuel cycle, including waste management. These are now called Nuclear Life Cycle Innovation Campuses. The engagement, off the charts. 28 states have already submitted proposals, and only 2 or 3 will actually get sites. Compare that to the Yucca Mountain disaster. The hunger and engagement on nuclear is real, but Wall Street won't finance the projects. They say it's just too risky. In reality, it's too risky not to build them. With these executive orders and the Defense Production Board, the federal government now has the power to act. Our grid may be the greatest crisis in the entire energy sector. Power magazine called this presidential order the opening of federal financing for domestic component manufacturing. And that's what it is. T&D World said, for the first time, Washington is willing to treat the grid as national security infrastructure rather than an environmental compliance problem. This is what building civilization looks like. And $450 billion ain't nothing. This is the combined financing capacity Congress put behind the Defense Production Act last summer when it passed the One Big Beautiful Bill. The Department of Energy's Office of Energy Dominance Financing carries a loan guarantee of $250 billion. The Department of War's Office of Strategic Capital carries another $200 billion of loan capacity for supply chain and defense industrial investments. Add another $12 billion in direct appropriations for the grid, nuclear, and minerals, and the total comes to $462 billion. For scale, the entire Marshall Plan, the program that rebuilt Europe after World War II, was $170 billion in today's dollars. This isn't about rebuilding Europe, though. Today, we're rebuilding America. We are putting America first. So while the bankers, pundits, and haters scream about Iran and hope America loses, America is mobilizing right now to secure our status as an industrial superpower for the coming century. Consider that the United States imports roughly 85% of its large power transformers. 85%. You can't build a substation, a transmission line, a data center, a reactor hookup, an LNG terminal, a new oil refinery, or even a factory. You can't build anything without transformers. Lead times on these parts from overseas runs 120 weeks. That's over 2 years. There is only one domestic producer of these transformers, Cleveland Cliffs Butler Works in the famous Butler, Pennsylvania. We've been literally importing these critical parts from the same countries that would be our adversaries in a conflict. So what is the administration doing about all of this? They are talking to the people who already know how to bend metal at industrial scale. Companies like General Electric, General Motors, Ford. The media covers this simply as weapons production, but under the Trump administration, defense of our nation has taken on a whole new industrial meaning. We are roping the commercial manufacturers that have real factories, real tooling, real workforces into what administration officials have called the Arsenal of Democracy 2.0. This is a deliberate echo of the World War II industrial mobilization. Arthur Herman wrote the book on it in 2012 called Freedom's Forge. You've heard the stories. How Henry Kaiser's shipyards learned to build a Liberty ship from keel to commissioning in under 5 days. How Ford converted Willow Run, a single Michigan farm field, into a bomber factory that rolled out a B-24 bomber every 63 minutes. What this administration is doing with the Defense Production Board, these executive orders, the funding, and with the calls to Detroit, is an industrial mobilization no other president has attempted since Franklin Roosevelt. We are using Iran's attempt to control global energy supplies to cut through 20 years of regulatory opposition that would have made this impossible in peacetime. This is how you use presidential power. This is what Lincoln did. This is what Roosevelt did. This is the American system. And while America rebuilds, the old Atlanticist order is cracking. Last week, Undersecretary of War Elbridge Colby delivered a speech in Europe that made the paper tiger crumble. He told Western Europe they needed to secure Western Europe and its energy needs, not expand NATO as a tripwire for world war. He called it NATO 3.0. He told them President Trump has rightly made clear that he expects allies and partners to step up and help secure the Strait of Hormuz waterway in the Middle East. And then he said this, I underline the criticality of this for our relationship going forward. The room was silent. Crickets. Then President Trump posted on Truth Social, now that the Hormuz Strait situation is over, I received a call from NATO asking if we need some help. I told them to stay away, unless they just want to load up their ships with oil. They were useless when needed. A paper tiger. To the Telegraph the same week, Trump said this, I always knew they were a paper tiger. And Putin knows that too. Meanwhile, Europe itself is fracturing in real time. In Hungary, Peter Magyar, the man Brussels called its savior, the man the Economist packaged as Hungary's Macron, spent last week demanding that Zelensky either resume pipeline flows from Russia or no money flows to Ukraine. This wasn't a globalist victory. Perhaps it was more like a Pyrrhic victory. Then on Saturday, Bulgaria delivered a landslide to Rumen Radev, another realist in Europe. 2 weeks from today, on May 7th, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, faces local elections in Wales and Scotland, where Labour is polling third in Wales and Scotland. Labour has never lost a Wales election. Scotland used to be a Labour stronghold. If these polls hold, Starmer's government will record what the British press is already calling the worst local election result in the history of the Labour Party. It's not just Starmer's eulogy, but Labour's funeral. And if the polls hold, the United Kingdom will face a crisis of separation. Most of the leading parties in Wales and Scotland want out of the kingdom. And next week, King Charles visits Washington with his kingdom in freefall, the nation broken, and London now Londonistan. The British have spent the last months insisting that Charles is Britain's best hope to restore the so-called special relationship. That relationship died with Christopher Steele and the support of the Russiagate coup when Trump came back into office in 2025. But watching the King of England grovel in the United States will certainly be good American entertainment. Especially since America turns 250 this year. The king comes begging, the EU grows weaker by the minute, and the United States is finally rebuilding. American greatness is again marching forward one step at a time. We've done this before. It works. It's called the American system. That's why the press is going crazy over Iran, because the revolution is not in the Persian Gulf. It's global. We are creating a new American century. We are asserting the right of man to build, advance, and reach for the stars. It is truly springtime in America. We are ending the wars, cleaning out the corruption, breathing life and purpose back into the world, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop us. If you like this content and want to help us keep fighting, smash the subscribe button and contribute to Promethean Action. We will never stop fighting, and today we are winning like never before. Then share this video with anyone who still thinks our best days are behind us. Send it to your congressman, your senator, your county commissioner, even your uncle on Facebook, because we are just getting started. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.